Are you on mute?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. How are you? Just got a couple more people we're waiting on, and then we'll get started. I think I forgot to put in your list to have a half a cup measure or a quart. You could do a quarter cup measure. You're going to need a half a cup of something. So if you've got it, great. So we are going to get started. We have 3 different things to go into one. And so there's a little bit, it's not too complicated, but we're just going to kind of separate things out. The first thing we're going to do is get our flour mixture. So you have a bag that's like a white powder, that's our flour, and it actually has baking powder mixed in it. So it's going to help it grow.
I want this right out by myself.
Okay.
And we're going to need a whisk. So if you don't have a whisk, that. So we're going to put our flour mixture into a bowl, and we're going to use our whisk and whisk it because I gave you some baking powder to go with this, which is going to help it grow, but I didn't really mix it. So we're going to use our whisks to mix it together. You might actually see a little bit of a whiter powder in your bags. That's the baking powder, but we just want that all mixed through. And a whisk is a good way to do that. And Miss Doris, Isaiah, we have, I think before you joined, I told everybody to get a half a cup of measure, just a half cup, or a quarter cup is fine, but we're gonna end up taking a half cup out of our flour mixture in just a second. So we'll get that all mixed together. Now we are going to use a half a cup of this for our crumble topping. So we're going to take it out and we're going to put it into a bowl. It doesn't have to be a real big bowl, like a big cereal size bowl or something like that is fine. We're going to scoop a half a cup out, and we're just going to put it into that smaller bowl. And then we're going to set the rest aside. So I'm going to take out a half a cup of my flour mixture and make sure we have it leveled off. Sometimes you can use a knife, or sometimes I just shake it till it levels off. And you can put that into your separate bowl. And then that's all we're gonna need of our little half cup measure. And we're gonna take our big bowl that we started with, and we're just gonna set that aside. We don't need it yet because we're gonna make our topping first. And with our blueberry muffins today are going to be a little bit healthier. I figured out a recipe for a Greek yogurt in there. So it's going to add some protein, fill our tummies a little bit more. And we don't have to use oil, which is nice. But we are going to add kind of a sugary topping because I'm a sucker for topping on these types of muffins. So that's, we're kind of making it healthy at the same time, keeping a little sweet happening. So we've got our smaller bowl, which is that flour mixture of a half a cup measure. And in that, we're just gonna add 2 things. If you didn't get a chance ahead of time, I gave you 2 different blocks of butter. One is a bigger one, one's a smaller one. And we wanna melt and have the bigger melted one first. That's what we're gonna use for our topping. So the bigger melted one, which is 3 tablespoons, versus the other melted one, which was 2 tablespoons. And if you put it together, honestly, if you eyeball it, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. So we're gonna mix that into our flour, as well as your brown sugar. So you should have a bag of brown sugar, and before you put that brown sugar in, you can take a taste. And that's gonna be quite tasty. And so we're gonna add our brown sugar in. And you could use a small spoon or a fork or something to mix this together. You might, sometimes a fork is nice because if the brown sugar is created some lumps. A fork can kind of smash those lumps. And we're just going to stir it together till it all mixes. So we just have our brown sugar, that 1/2 cup of flour, and 3 ounces of melted butter. Now the flour is not that great to eat by itself. It's not really great for our tummies, but you can have a little taste if you want. This is going to taste good because brown sugar, any sugar and butter is always, I mean, amazing. I could just eat it all day, but it's really not that great for us. So you'll see it's kind of like a fluffy mixture. It's like, it sort of looks like sand. And it kind of probably feels like sand too. You can feel it if you want. You can touch it with your fingers. You can take a little taste of it. Tasty sand. Reminds me of the beach. I'm ready to go to a beach. So our mixture.
When we go to the beach, we have a beach bar party.
You do? That's fun. I am ready for a beach. This sand looks just like, this is like edible sand. Don't want to eat real sand, do we? That won't taste very good. So you've got a nice fluffy little texture here. Once that's mixed together, we're going to put that aside because now we've got to make the actual muffin part. So mine's ready to go. I'm going to set mine aside. And now I'm going to get another empty bowl because we're going to put the wet stuff in this bowl. Wet stuff and sugar. The first thing we're going to do is we have to crack our egg, which is a lot of fun. So just a reminder, our egg, we have a short and a long. We're going to tap our egg on the side of a bowl till it cracks. You don't want a wimpy crack. You don't want to smash it. It's a huge mess. So we want to do it enough until we hear a crack, and then we're going to find that crack and we're going to open it up like a book. So parents, you can have the kids do it into a separate bowl if you're worried about shells, but it's great to have them try it on their own. So we're going to tap it till it cracks. I just heard mine crack and I see the crack. And now I'm going to find it with my thumbs and open it up. And your fingers might get messy. That's okay. We'll just wipe them off. I'm going to crack it. And if you find any shells in that, a great tip is to use the broken shell and scoop it right out. So we're going to set my shell aside. We don't want the shell. That's not that good. That won't taste very good. So make sure we don't have any shells in there. And we're going to get our whisk again. And we're going to whisk our egg for a little bit. And then we're going to add our sugar. So we'll whisk our egg. Once that started to look pretty good and mixed, we can add our sugar, and we're going to whisk our sugar in with our egg. And you should have a little baggie of sugar, and you can taste that sugar too if you want. I'm going to wipe some of the egg off my thumbs before I do that. So you'll see that's also sweet like the brown sugar, but it's a different kind of sweet. So we're adding our sugar to our egg, and we're going to mix that too. Now this is something you probably don't want to taste because raw egg is not very good for us. It's not that tasty. So now we don't really want to eat the egg and the sugar mixed. We'll taste the batter once we have it all done. but I would recommend not tasting that now. So we're putting our sugar into the egg and we're gonna mix with our whisk. So we've got the sugar and the egg mixed. Now we're gonna add a couple more things. And at the beginning, I mentioned that we're using Greek yogurt. So we're gonna add our Greek yogurt now to the wet mixture, and you can have a taste of it. You'll notice that this isn't flavored Greek yogurt. So maybe sometimes when you eat yogurt at home, it might taste something like strawberries or bananas or peach or whatnot. This doesn't have any extra flavoring in it, so it's not going to bring extra flavor to it. But it has a little bit of a tang, which I like. So we can scoop that into our mixture. And like I said, it adds some good protein, vitamin D. Slowly mix that in as well. Sometimes Greek yogurt is really good if you like honey. You could put a little bit of honey on Greek yogurt and have that by itself. Put nuts on it, or granola. So now I've mixed my Greek yogurt in. I'll give you guys a minute to get caught up. It's looking good, guys. Good whisking. We have 2 more wet ingredients. We're gonna add our butter, and then if you don't have vanilla, it's okay, but if you have vanilla, we're gonna put a little bit of vanilla in, just a splash of vanilla. So we're gonna add the other melted butter to this wet ingredient. This is adding a little bit of fat to it, which will also help it stay moist. Mixing that in. Doesn't look like any blueberry muffins yet. And then we'll add a little splash of vanilla. Maybe like a half a teaspoon. You smell that vanilla? Smells really good. Now vanilla, if you've taken my classes before, I mentioned that vanilla is not really tasty to have by itself. It's really good friends with sugar, and it just adds some nice flavor to our baked items, but it's not something that we want to eat by itself. You're gonna taste it, so oh yuck, why are we adding this? It's just a good just adds a little another level of flavor to our blueberry muffins here. So we've got all of our wet ingredients now combined into this pan, into our bowl. You probably won't need your whisk anymore. So I'm going to set my whisk aside.
Allison, did you say a half a teaspoon of vanilla or a teaspoon?
Yeah, about a half a teaspoon. I just sort of splashed a little in. I think the original recipe didn't even have it, so I just threw it in just because I liked it.
Gotcha.
And so before we mix our wet and our dry ingredients, now keep in mind that topping we're keeping aside. The thing that we mixed our brown sugar, that stays by itself for right now. We just have our bowl of flour that we started with in the beginning, and now it's time to get our frozen blueberries. So if you don't have them out yet, you kept them in your freezer, that's great. We wanted to keep them pretty cold. And we're gonna mix them in the flour first. And this helps keep them from sinking to the bottom. And it also helps from them leaking out too much. And us keeping them frozen. I actually like to use frozen berries for my muffins because I feel like they're less like all over the place. And sometimes you buy blueberries at the store and they're all big and then it just turns into this big blueberry gooey thing, which I actually like them a little bit smaller. So you can put them in your flour mixture. To start, we're just gonna coat them with the flour. And if you use fresh blueberries, that's fine too, but coating them in the flour does help. So you can actually do an experiment. You could make one recipe with these, or you can try these and then you can try one with some regular blueberries and see what you like better. That's the fun thing about being a chef is you get to experiment and try different things. So once our blueberries are in our flour mixture, now we can add it to our wet mixture. And you can either add the big, whatever bowl you have biggest, just mix one with the other. It doesn't really matter. So my bigger bowl is my wet bowl. So I'm going to put my dry into my wet. This is when a spatula may come in handy if you want to use that to stir, or a wooden spoon or a big spoon. But I kind of fold in the batter. I don't really stir it hard. I sort of go around the edges. I'm real gentle to start because we just want it mixed. We don't need to over mix it, but we want it all mixed together. Sometimes if you mix things that's using flour too much, then it gets sort of chewy. So we're just kind of gently mixing it all together. It'll take a minute, but that's okay. Once you have it mixed, you can have a little bite of the batter, see what you think. You may taste the tanginess of that Greek yogurt, but I like that tanginess with the sweet of the sugar. And then once the blueberries are all cooked through, that'll add a little bit more sweet as well. Okay, so mine's all mixed together now. Once it's mixed, then we're gonna add it to our muffin tins. Now I gave you 6 muffin liners because I made 6 really big muffins with my experiment when I did this recipe earlier this week. If you want to do smaller muffins, you can. You'll have more than 6. And we've got plenty of topping. One other side note is putting on the topping is going to be a little bit messy. So if you want to try to contain the mess, parents, if you have a baking pan or something you could put underneath your muffin cups, that might help contain the mess. If you don't care, then it doesn't matter. So when I was filling up my muffin pans, I used a big scoop, like an ice cream scoop, or you could use a big spoon or something like that. And I pretty much almost filled them to the top. So if you want smaller muffins, you can make them a little bit smaller. And obviously you might not need to cook them as long. So we're gonna put these into our muffin cups. Who tasted the batter? Who likes the batter? Did you guys taste the batter? Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? Of course, it's not something we want to eat uncooked. A lot of, it might give us a tummy ache, but it's okay to have a taste. You may have a little bit left over. This does fill these things to the brim. And I kind of flatten mine out because we're going to put the topping on. These are going to rise and they'll start to kind of mound up at the top. But when you put them in, if you flatten them out a little bit, it'll be easier to get that topping on. So we want to get topping on as much of the surface as we can because as it rises, it's going to expand a little. And these, like I said, these are going to make big, big muffins if you fill the 6. And I have, I don't know, I've got maybe a tablespoon left. I can't even fit in here. Once we have our batter in, we're going to go back to that topping that we made and we're going to cover them all up. And this is the messy bit. So like I said, if you have a pan or something you want to put underneath your muffin tin, that'll probably save some mess. And I'm dropping it on and then I'm kind of pressing it in a little bit just so it sticks. But we've got lots of topping, plenty to go around. So even if you've made more than 6 muffins, you'll have plenty. I just loaded it up. It's going to be a little messy, that's all right. And I actually, when it was in the oven, I actually put a pan on the lower level underneath my, not directly underneath, it wasn't sitting on it, but I put it on the layer below a pan just to catch some of the edges if the topping, it might fall off. And if you don't want that nice little sugary burnt smell in the bottom of your oven, you may want to put something underneath it. Of course, I figured that out halfway through, so I still ended up with that smell. But won't be an issue if you're making the smaller muffins, probably. And you'll probably have some topping left over if you're just making the 6. But you know, I'm making a nice little mess here. You probably want to get a little bit of the crumbs out from around, but they won't burn, I don't think. The more topping you put on now, the more you'll have once it's baked. And if you haven't already, you'll want to preheat your oven to about 350. I found that when I did the big muffins, it took almost 30 minutes to bake them through, just because they're so big. And they'll start getting golden brown kind of on the top. That's what you'll want to look for. If you're doing the smaller muffins, it may only take 24, 25 minutes. So you'll want to keep an eye on everything. And then if you take them out and you feel like you want them done a little bit more, pop them back in. You want them to sit for a little bit before you try them because those blueberries will be pretty hot. Give it a minute, give it about 5 minutes to let it sit. Sometimes it cooks a little bit more, comes together after you take them out of the oven.
Say thank you. So she
Thank you.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for working with me, you guys.
Okay.
Thank
I don't know
you.
what we're doing next week. I was thinking maybe like an avocado toast kind of thing.
Okay.
A
We'll do
lunch
that one.
for us to eat. And different toppings that we can put on our avocado toast. That's always tasty.
That sounds good.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think I'll be posting that up pretty soon. What do you guys think? Are you excited to eat your blueberry muffins?
Are you excited?
Yes.
Think they're gonna be yummy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they will.
Think these are gonna be good? Look at them. Look at this. So.
And like I said, you look for golden brown on top. You know, I pretty much took about 30 minutes for mine because I jam-packed mine.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, boo.
Well, thanks
Thank you, Miss
everybody.
Allison.
Thank you, Miss Allison.
Say it so she can hear you.
Great.
Thank you, Miss Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye.
coming.
Bye.
Bye.